Hello, my name is Gardner and I'm an Accessibility and Digital Inclusion Specialist at Atos. In this video I will go over a quick introduction to ARIA, why it exists, how it is used and when it shouldn't be used. Before we discuss what ARIA is, it's important to understand why it exists. Over time, web technologies have evolved from HTML markup with basic styling to large dynamic web applications with lots of emphasis on visual presentation of information. Technologies like CSS and Bootstrap alongside JavaScript, Ajax and AngularJS means web content is more dynamic than ever, and custom implementations of controls is commonplace. With this comes a large problem from an accessibility point of view. Custom components and widgets are not actual HTML controls, which poses a large problem for assistive technologies. HTML on its own does not provide the means for assistive technologies to gather information about custom controls or auto-updating content. ARIA exists to address this. It stands for Accessibility Rich Internet Applications. You are making your application accessible when using ARIA. ARIA itself is a set of HTML attributes you can apply to custom implementations of controls as well as live or auto-updating content that then allows AT to read information about these controls or detect when page content is dynamically updated. So now we know what ARIA is and why it exists, we're going to take a quick look at where it is most commonly used. By no means is this the entirety of the ARIA suite of attributes, but these are arguably the most important ones, and definitely ones you are likely to come across when auditing or developing for accessibility. Firstly, we have the role attribute. This is used to inform assistive technologies of the type of a control. So let's say we've got a div that uses JavaScript to perform an action when it is clicked. This is essentially a custom implementation of a button. Therefore, we apply a role button to the div. So when assistive technologies come across the control, they will interpret it as a button instead of a div. This is helpful for screen reader users especially, who will expect functionality like this when they come across a button. Next, we have ARIA label. This is a way of applying a label to a control that is not visible on the page. This is typically used to provide extra information about a control to users. For example, the date format for a date field. Essentially, it's just an invisible label that screen readers will read to the user. Continuing on, we have ARIA expanded. This is used to tell assistive technologies when a control is collapsed or expanded. Commonly, this is used on headings or buttons that display or hide content when clicked on. This does require JavaScript to change the value to true or false when content does become expanded or collapsed. ARIA hidden is a way to tell assistive technologies when content has been visually hidden. Typically where a class such as visibility none is used, programmatic equivalents are needed. So assistive technologies know to ignore hidden content when ARIA hidden is set to true. Another important attribute is ARIA live. ARIA live is used on containers that will get content added to it dynamically or where content is updated inside it. This means assistive technologies will detect the change in the content within the ARIA live region and inform the user that a change has occurred. Now we know some of the most common ARIA attributes and a few examples of when they are used. However, there are some things that are important to remember when it comes to using ARIA. Firstly, you should only use ARIA when it is absolutely necessary. We always recommend that developers use the standard HTML controls such as buttons, checkboxes, links, etc., as the information ARIA can provide is already available within the standard HTML controls. It's a common sentiment within the accessibility community that no ARIA is better than bad ARIA. Secondly, it's important to remember that ARIA can be complex to implement correctly. Where certain roles are used, other ARIA attributes may also need to be used to make the control accessible. Lastly, ARIA is a relatively new web technology. Browser support for ARIA attributes varies massively from browser to browser, and some legacy browsers do not even support it at all. This again reinforces why we always recommend that you use standard HTML controls. And with that, I have hopefully given you a quick introduction to ARIA. I hope you have found this useful and thank you for watching.